Excited to have Adam Rauman from Boss Arrighi and Hoag with us today. Wanted to start off the show today by talking about something that's kind of near and dear to people's heart: foreclosures and short sales. It's the most sexy thing to talk about, right, Adam? Everybody loves talking about it.
Extremely positive for a Sunday morning.
Yeah, you know. But what's interesting is that foreclosures have dropped to their lowest level since 2007. And while they're not as prevalent of an issue, there's still enough of them to be a concern for people. And the following 5 states have the highest foreclosure inventory. We like to give information about the Tampa market, but there's a lot of people here that own properties in other parts of the country that retired down here or moved down here. So it's always important for them to know kind of what's going on in some of these other markets. So New Jersey, 6%, Florida, 5.4%, so we're second. New York, 4.6%, Hawaii, 3.1%, and Maine, 3%. So we're still up the chart. We still have a significant amount of foreclosures, but a few years ago it was a third of the market. You know, it was such a big part of the market. Well, now it's not.
You had a lot of bad loans out there, and the banks have done a pretty good job of cleaning their books of those bad loans.
And so now, I think that as we kind of, trend and focus on the second half, of 2014, we're kind of getting to that point. We're almost at the midway point of the year. Seeing a lot less foreclosures this year is a lot of positive signs for the market. But there are still people out there concerned about it. Are there a lot of foreclosures kind of in dormancy that are kind of still out there that we don't know about? And I'm sure there are. They call it the shadow inventory. You know what's interesting, and I'm pretty sure you probably heard this quote too, or this figure. I heard shadow inventory so much it made me want to vomit. Like 2 years ago, how often people are shadow inventory, shadow inventory. I got so tired of hearing the word, I forbid its use in my office. You're not allowed to say shadow inventory anymore in my office.
Well, people hear a new word and they just like to continue to use it.
Oh, it was crazy. It was shadow inventory. Have you heard about the shadow inventory? And everybody became an expert on shadow inventory. Every newspaper article was shadow inventory. Everything you'd see on Fox News or CNN or CNBC, it was all, everything real estate, there was always discussion about the shadow inventory and how it was going to crush the market and all this. But you know what's interesting? We never really saw much of an impact from that quote-unquote shadow inventory. We didn't see the market crash. We didn't see gobs of foreclosures hit. I've talked about it on the show before, and I think a lot of the reason was because the banks got smart about how they released the inventory. They made sure to wait, and they held on to some of it because they knew that by putting it out there, not only were the prices not rising enough for it to make sense, a couple years ago, now you're seeing some of them trickle out because the prices rose, but also banks make money loaning money.
They make a lot of money loaning money, and I've even seen a few houses that I know of that are foreclosures the banks own, and they're refusing to sell the house because you're just waiting for the market to come.
They know the market. They know the values keep going up. So there's no urgency for them to throw them out there because they're well aware of it, and and quite frankly, they don't have as many of them anymore. So it's not as much of a struggle for them to deal with the REO inventory and the management of all the staff that has to manage all of it. So they can take their time, they can be more strategic, they can make smarter business decisions about the homes that they own. And I think that's what I see more of is they're making business decisions. Hey, look, inventory in this area is going up in price. We don't really need to sell this one yet. Let's get it cleaned up and secured, but let's wait a little while. Let's wait till we feel like we can time the market. Now, what I will say is I think that historically, everyone always thinks that they could time the market, whether it's stocks or real estate, any financial market. People that think or want to quote-unquote time the market end up in many instances, missing the boat, completely missing the boat on the whole timing aspect of it, and then waiting till it's too late.
Well, there's always that opportunity cost thing, so people try to hold on to things for too long, and then they wait too long, or they sell too quick, and you're always going to be able to second guess yourself, like they say, right. Hindsight's 20/20.
So I always think, my concern is the banks holding on to some of these are they holding on to some of them too long? Are they going to get to the point where it's like, oops, we missed it? And it happens. I mean, so for example, last year we saw a huge surge in sales in that kind of $150,000 to $250,000 price point because the hedge funds were buying up a third of the market in that price point because they wanted to turn them into rentals and they had a business plan for it. And looking back on it now, I think a lot of the hedge funds didn't really handle it well because looking at their numbers, they overbought in some areas. They didn't get a good enough rents that they thought they'd get. So there were some mistakes in their model, but they were buying up a large part of the inventory. And when you have that, what ultimately we saw this year was kind of a fallback in that price range. So if you look at our market right now, I think you got kind of 2 markets going on. You got the upper end market that's doing better, and you got more activity. And then you got that 150 to 250 market where a lot of the consumers were prompted to act based on last year's figures. They see values rising, they see more home sales, so they're like, oh, it's time for me to sell my home now. But the problem is so much of that activity was driven by hedge funds that are gone now. So we've even seen it in neighborhoods where last year a home would have got a $250,000 price point. Now it's 220. Literally because the hedge funds drove those values up in some of those areas. So it's interesting how much of an impact that you can really see just at different price points, in Tampa. But the change in the foreclosures was really noticeable this year. And it's funny though, because sometimes even though there aren't as many of them, what I'm finding more now is because there aren't as many of them, the ones that are there are sticking out like a sore thumb.
Well, they are, and some of the banks sat back on some. They had some houses they knew they wanted to foreclose on, and they just waited. You're getting to the point now where they're actually pushing those through a lot quicker. So if you get 3 months behind, they're likely to start filing paperwork, especially if they think there's some value in your house.
So that's obviously the opportunity to call Boss Arrighi and Hoag, get some help, get some foreclosure defense, get some discussions about short sale, ahead of time, versus the rumors, talking to your neighbor a few years ago when you could sit there for years and the bank probably wasn't going to do anything. Now, because they don't have as many, they're able to pull the trigger and take action and make those things happen that they couldn't have done, a couple years ago.
Well, and what helps people a lot is we get people that come in our office, they're still paid up, but they're like, I'm getting crushed.
I know it's going to happen.
I need a plan.
Right.
What can I do?
Right.
And that's the best.
Or I've lost my job, I've drained my savings. That's the one thing we see too. And obviously we're in a position to sell the home, so we'll get people that will come to us for the financial advice, and we're like, oh, no. We are not a lawyer, we are not a CPA, we're real estate brokers, we can sell your house. We can't really give you advice about, what you should or shouldn't pay, or what obligations you have, or any of the financial side of it. So we obviously encourage them to speak to you guys. But I think one of the interesting things about that is that consumer knows that the end is near in terms of when their when their financial money is kind of drained and up, and when they need to revert over to saying, I can't pay this anymore.
Well, hopefully they're not being ostriches, because ostriches is what they used to be, where they'd stick their head in the sand and pretend it wasn't going to happen.
And we saw a lot of that, and I hope it's not the case, but I know it happens. And I think the other side of it is you've got the consumer that does stick their head in the sand, and you've got the consumer that waits till it's too late, that maybe thinks they have more time because they've heard rumors that, oh, you got years before you have to do anything. But so now they do have to be more present in the moment. They do need to talk to someone more soon. And nothing's more discouraging than to have a client who a few years ago was in a great financial position, and now they're draining all their assets to pay their mortgage. They're liquidating their savings account. They don't have a job, and they're cashing out 401ks. And we would love to have those people earlier in the process have an opportunity to talk to you before they've already drained and run through all that money. But it's the unfortunate side effect sometimes.
Well, we used to have people that you could sit in your house for a year or 2 years or even 3 before they start to file. Now you're 2 to 3 months behind, and they're starting to send you notices and threatening file. And when they hit 3 months, they're likely to file in a lot of cases. So I hate to see people go bankrupt just to hold on to a house. It's great to own it, but you can do a lot more with it.
And that's something, so if you have questions about that, you can call my office. We'll put you in touch with Adam and Boss Arrighi and Hoag. Our office number, 855-970-WFLA. Really easy phone number to remember. Again, it's 855, followed by the station you're listening to. So it's 855-970-9352. Call us any time of day with any questions you have about this. We'd certainly love to point you in the right direction, get you referred to Boss Arrighi and Hoag for any advice or help, from a financial perspective. And then, of course, if the short sale is right for you, we certainly look forward to the opportunity to listing and selling the property.